We ring this bell as we make this time sacred by our presence and intention. Good morning on this beautiful fall day as the seasons change, and so do we.
Sit by my side, come as close as the air, sharing a memory of gray, and wander in my words, and dream about the pictures that I play, of changes. Green leaves of summer turn red in the fall, to brown and to yellow they fade, and then they have to die, trapped within the circle time parade of changes. Scenes of my young years were warm in my mind, visions of shadows that shine, till one day I returned and found they were the victims of the vines of changes. The world spinning madly, it drifts in the dark, swings through a hollow of haze, a race around the stars, a journey through the universe ablaze with changes. Moments of magic will glow in the night, all fears of the forest are gone, and then the morning breaks, they're swept away by golden drops of dawn, of changes. Passions will part to a strange melody, as fires will sometimes burn cold, like petals in the wind. We're puppets to the silver strings of souls, of changes. Your tears will be trembling, now we're somewhere else. One last cup of wine we will pour, I'll kiss you one more time and leave you on the rolling river shore of changes.
Welcome to Granite Peak Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Prescott, Arizona. I'm Suki Jones, your worship associate today. We extend a warm welcome to all. We're glad you're able to join us and hope you are in good spirits, good health, and able to have escaped most of the smoke of the last few days. Despite our continued social distance, we want to stay connected. So please join us for the breakout rooms after the service. It's a great opportunity to catch up with what's going on with friends and chat with new members. If you're joining us for the first time, please check out our website for more information about us. That would be at granitepeakuu.org. This is the mission statement of our congregation. We are a compassionate spiritual community that celebrates diversity, nurtures the personal and spiritual growth of all ages, shares our gifts, promotes justice for all, and serves the world we live in. We extend our heartfelt thanks to Heather Knowles for her technical expertise and direction in today's service. And we welcome Manuel Lucero IV as our guest speaker. Manuel is the newly appointed executive director of the Museum of Indigenous People, formerly the Smoke Eye Museum, which he has been involved with since 2014. He has lived and worked in the Prescott area since 2007. His educational background is in American Indian Studies, and he is a veteran of the United States Army. He and his wife, Nicole, and their 3 children are all involved with the local Native community and participate in powwow and gourd dances throughout the Southwest. Manuel is a gourd dancer and a Southern straight dancer like his father, brother, and sons. He is currently president of the Prescott Powwow Committee and vice president of the Granite Mountain Gourd Society, a Native American warrior society that not only participates in gourd dance ceremonies traditional to Southern Plains tribes, but this organization also strives to assist veterans and their families. Welcome, Manuel. Although we are often physically apart, we are still in community, as well as beginning some of our activities in person. Our children today are meeting in the Faith Development Building from 10 to 11, celebrating Indigenous veterans who have served our community. Another announcement, more volunteers are needed as elves and bakers for our Link event in December. Details are in today's order of service. And please also continue to check the Weekly Peak and our website for announcements and information on our regular weekly meetings. We begin our service with the lighting of our chalice. Today's reading is by Bets Winneke. May this flame, symbol of transformation since time began, fire our curiosity, strengthen our wills, sustain our courage as we seek what is good within us and around us. Manuel will be speaking today about changes in our lives. So I invite you to ponder these words of gathering by Arlen Goff. Thresholds. We cross them every day, from room to room, from outside to inside and back again, from here to there, from anywhere to everywhere, from age to age. Every threshold offers an opportunity for change, for renewal, for transformation, from what we were and what we are to what we can be. In this hour and in this place, we cross a threshold from our day-to-day everydayness into space and time attuned to the other, to the sacred, to the holy, into an awareness of new life pregnant with possibilities. How will we be renewed in this moment? How will we be changed in this hour? How will we be transformed through this gathering of beloved community? Come, let us worship and sing together our opening hymn, number 389, Gather Here.
Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, spirits draw near. Gathered
Please join me in reciting our covenant. Love is the doctrine of this congregation, the quest for truth, its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve others in community. Thus do we covenant together. During the next few moments, we remember our joys and sorrows and realize they come about because of change. A change perhaps in health, a change in relationships, a change in circumstances. Here in our spiritual community, we find and build connection. We trust in the strength of our mutual support, knowing how it has sustained us day after day, year after year. You are invited at this time to recall the names of persons or places you are holding in your hearts, either as a source of concern or cause for celebration. Spirit of life, may we be reminded that all things come and go, that today's joys and today's sorrows will in time give way to those of tomorrow. Remind us that we are not alone in our times of grief and pain. Remind us that we are not alone in joy and wonder. May we always be open to growth and change, to movement, to grace. Shalom, amen, and may it be so. This is the time in our service when normally we gather the offering. We pause so that we may exercise that all-important generosity of spirit. Our offerings lift up and enable this self-supporting congregation to support its many ministries. Additionally, we extend a hand to the greater community through our Seeds of Support program. During the month of November, our recipient is the Salvation's Army program, helping people during the winter months. And it's a change from Operation Deep Freeze because that was difficult, knowing when it was going to dip below freezing and everybody would rush around trying to get supplies. So now with the Salvation Army's new endeavor, it will be open all the time and much more reliable. You'll find information about them in your order of service. You may donate by sending a check or going to prescottuu.org/giving. On the bottom left-hand side of the screen, click the word donate to contribute and designate where you want your contribution to go. This link is also available in the chat on this video. The gifts from this congregation are most gratefully received. Blessed be. And now enjoy this moment of our offertory music, something a little different and special. We'll learn more about Southern straight dancing in a little bit. How many of us tend to agree with Holden Caulfield in J.D. Salinger's The Catcher in the Rye when he says, certain things, they should stay the way they are. You ought to be able to stick them in one of those big glass cases and just leave them alone. I think Manuel will provide us with a different view of big glass cases. Oh, except I'm ahead of myself on the schedule, so let me back up. Right now, we are going to have Manuel lead us in a prayer and followed by a musical interlude. And then comes the words I just said. So Heather, just skip from the musical interlude to the message, okay? Thank you. Manuel.
Lucio, thank you everyone for inviting me to pray with you and worship with you and speak to you about change. We know a lot about it, so if you please join me in a prayer, and I'll pray part of this in my own people's language, and then I'll try to keep it in English so everyone understands what I'm saying. I should introduce myself first to you though before we start talking to the Great Spirit. Manuel Lucero. So hello, my name is Manuel Lucero from the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma, and I am a Southern straight dancer. We'll talk about that later. Right now, let's talk to the Great Spirit and ask for his blessings and him to join us today. Oh, Tumkash, Creator, in that good way, Grandfather, I ask that you join us here today in that good way, Great Spirit, and look after us. Creator, we are grateful for your blessings you bestow upon us, and those blessings you continue to bestow upon us, Grandfather. Creator, in that way, we also ask you to be with us as we journey forward in this life that you've given us so graciously. Great Spirit, I ask that you look over our loved ones that aren't able to be here with us today, Grandfather. I ask that your healing winds continue to blow upon them and on their lives, Grandfather Creator. I ask you to open our hearts so that we can hear your message clearly, Grandfather Creator. And I ask that when we speak that you are speaking through us and we deliver only good and only wonderful things to our fellow human beings, as well as to our four-legged relatives and the standing people, the trees and the flyers, the birds, and the beautiful rocks and rivers and water and this beautiful earth that you've given us. Grandfather, I thank you for all these things. I say Wanton, Aho, Mitakiwasem, which means amen to all my relations. Oh, that was wonderful music by Carlos Naki, very famous flutist. I had the opportunity to meet him once down in Canyon de Chelly. But today we're here to talk about change. And, change sometimes can be scary. The little uh, verbiage that says, we walked to school uphill in the snow 2 miles every day, and we liked it that way. Well, change is a good thing sometimes. For example, growing up, um, I was about knee high to a grasshopper. And those dances that you saw in that video earlier used to be illegal. It was against federal law for us to do those things until 1978. So this is an ancient history. This is living memory. Like I said, I was a young person, very young, and we drive up in the hills, and we were going to a picnic or a revival, and we'd hear the drums going, and my dad would park the car and pop the trunk and put our eagle feathers on and our regalia, and we go out and dance. But we had to hide because it was against federal law for us to do so. So as a native person, federally recognized tribal member, it was against the law for us to practice our religion until, once again, 1978 with the American Indian Religious Freedoms Act. So that change was a good change. That change from that being against the law to us being able to gather, as you see in a gathering of nations. That was from 2019, I believe, or 2018. That we're able to do that in public. Not only do that, we invite a lot of outsiders to come and join us and observe and learn. And every one of those beats, if you notice, that drum beat was like a heartbeat. And as it picked up, as the dance started moving more, the drum got fiercer. Well, so does your heartbeat. They say when we're all out there dancing, our heart is beating at the same time. So we're all connected that way. But that change that came about with that was a good thing. There's other changes happening here in Prescott, having to do with the Smoke Eye. I don't know how many of you folks are familiar with the Smoke Eye people and who they were. You longtime residents of Prescott will know that the Smoke Eye were not a tribe at all. The photos you're seeing there is the museum in the old days, of course, and one of the Smoke Eye members. That happens to be an honorary chief of the Smoke Eye. And like I said, the Smoke Eye were not natives. They were white businessmen here in Prescott and others that were having a good time dressing up like and mocking and imitating Native American ceremony. You got to think they started this in 1921, and they didn't stop until 1990. And in 1921, of course, it was illegal for us to do these things, but these guys could do it. Not only would they do it, they were selling tickets at the gate to watch the show. And they would paint themselves in red face. That gentleman you see there is Senator Barry Goldwater, Smoke Eye Chief, honorary Smoke Eye Chief. The paint that they actually got from Max Factor of Hollywood, who jumped in with them and made up their own color for them. It's the Smoke Eye Red. Hopi people and other tribal people started protesting by writing letters to them. And the first one was in 1935, and it is filed in the Library of Congress right now, saying, please stop doing this. Please stop doing this. You're making a mockery of some of our sacred dances, and we don't like it. Can you please stop? Of course, Native people didn't have a voice then. And these guys were having fun, and it was a good time, and they were doing good in their community by raising money and saving the world's oldest rodeo, which all of us living here in Prescott know that that's Prescott's claim to fame. And because in 1921, the rodeo was in dire straits, and these guys came along with their Way Out West players show and decided to dress up and do the thing. And they sold enough tickets after 2 years of doing this show that they were able to bring the rodeo out of the red financially and into the black and saved the rodeo, which we celebrate today. And that was 100 years ago this year that they did that. So was it a good thing that they did for the community? Sure. Was it a good thing on how they did it? Probably not so much. You got to remember, these folks were, before the whole smoke eye phenomena, they were doing black minstrel shows, dressing in blackface, over here at the Elks Theater to raise money for the rodeo before that. And we all know that that's not okay. So go from blackface to red face, not a big deal for these guys. As I said, they continue to do this and their membership grew. It became like a fraternity, almost a fraternal organization to belong to. Anybody who was anybody in Prescott was a smoke eye. To be Prescott was to be smoke eye, to be smoke eye was to be Prescott. And at their peak, there were about 700 members, everyone from the garbage man all the way up, like I said, to the mayor and Senator Barry Goldwater himself. They continued, like I said, to do this until 1990. And their last dance, there was Hopi people out there protesting and holding up signs. And if you've ever met some good Hopi folks, they're not loud and boisterous folks. So when you got a Hopi grandma out there hollering and holding up a sign, you know you done messed up. So they finally stopped their dances. If you ask an old smoke eye, why they stopped, they say, well, people weren't interested anymore. It wasn't as fun. It was more work than it was fun, and so on. If you ask the Hopi, they'll say, we made them stop. And was it both? You bet. But that change was necessary. And the thing is that when they finally stopped and dissolved the Smoke Eye People's Organization in 1991, they turned over the museum and its assets to the Smoke Eye Museum Incorporated. And at that time, they rebranded to the Smoke Eye Museum of American Indian Art and Culture. And it was turned over to as a nonprofit, 501c nonprofit organization ran by a group of board of trustees. Well, at that time, of course, they were a bunch of old smoke eye, and they wanted to make sure that they perpetuated their legacy by showcasing in the museum itself not only genuine native artifacts, which included human remains. As a matter of fact, on the big stone table, when you first walk into the museum, there used to be a mummified baby. And it sat right there. And they had skulls and bones and everything on display right next to pottery and whatnot. And they would hang their costumes and masks that they had from their ceremonials amongst the genuine artifacts and trying to perpetuate their story that they were a tribe. And about, I'd say 20 years or so ago, a woman by the name of Cindy Gresser came in and got involved with the museum and found out what was going on. She thought, like most folks do when they first walked in there, it's an Indian museum and the Smoke Eye were a tribe. But that was not the case. She found out the truth about it. She eventually became president of the board of directors after volunteering for a time. And that change began. The change from being a farce, from being a mockery, to actually being a genuine museum of American Indian people, of Native people, of Indigenous people. And most all of the Smoke Eye ephemera was removed from the museum proper. And there was one room in the back dedicated to telling their story because they didn't want that to go away. And of course, being a museum, you're not about destroying history, you're about preserving history. But once again, change continued to happen. With the Native American Graves Repatriation Act, NAGPRA, in 1995, this institution was one of the first in the country to become 100% NAGPRA compliant. That means all of those human remains, all of those burial goods, all of those things that shouldn't have been had in their collection was removed and given back to the people for proper internment, care. Today, the Museum of Man in San Diego still has over 4,000 human remains in their possession, which I think is ridiculous. There's no reason to have and study those ancestors. But this institution was one of the first in the country to become 100%. So that change started happening. And back then, talking about changing the name was part of a conversation. Today, since most of them have gone, there's only about 20 or so original Smoke Eye left. But today, a majority of our board of trustees are Native people. So it went from being white guys who used to dress like Indians running the show to actual Native people running the show. I was hired about 7 years ago. I started cleaning toilets actually and sweeping the floors. Funny story with that is I had a bit of change in my own life because when my wife and I first moved here, my wife is Yaqui in Kiowa. She teaches at ASU. When we first moved here, I'm unloading our moving truck, and my wife has got the computer hooked up, and she's searching on the internet. And I think she was going to order pizza or something. And she ends up, like a lot of us do, getting kind of lost in the internet and searching around. So I have arms full of boxes, and I'm thinking to myself, of course, I didn't say it out loud, thinking to myself, honey, do something useful. And I said, why don't you look up the local tribes? Where are the powwows at? Where do we go to sweat lodge? Where do we go to do these things? And she's like, oh, okay. So she's banging away on the keyboard, and I'm still unloading boxes from the truck, bringing stuff in. And she says, oh, you ever heard of any Smoky Indians? And I said, no. I'm thinking of all 578 federally recognized tribes, and Smoky ain't one of them. So I said, no. Maybe they're a state recognized tribe, or maybe what they call a terminated tribe, because the government did just that. Or, they were a fictitious tribe. And I said, no, I've never heard of them. She pulls up a picture. It's a grainy black and white picture. She goes, well, here's a picture of them. And I looked at them. I said, wow, it kind of look like Pueblo people, but something's off. Their outfits are off. Everything seems off. And it paid me in mind. All of a sudden she starts laughing. And so I go into the other room where she's at, and she's laughing. She goes, you got to look at this. They're white guys. And I said, oh my goodness. She goes, they have a museum in town and everything. And I was like, oh, we're never going there. Then I was at a powwow later on that year here at Watson Lake. And I met the Cindy Gresser, the director then. And I was just kind of like, hi, shook her hand. And she invited me to come to the museum to show that things were different. And so I came, and I noticed that change was happening because at first I didn't want anything to do with this place. And now today I am the executive director, and change has happened. In February of 2020, just before we were all locked down, the museum changed its name. And with that change came the change of us being locked down in from COVID. It came the change of losing people that we loved and care about. COVID hit Indian country really hard. And we had to change gears here at the museum. We couldn't have tours. We couldn't have people coming in anymore. But we knew that our friends up at Hopi and Navajo and Apache were in dire straits. We knew they couldn't leave to go shopping. We knew they couldn't gather materials off the reservation they need to continue their art or their ceremonies. So we became kind of the unofficial hub of people dropping things off, cleaning supplies and masks and clothing and food and water and everything like that. And we made several runs up to the reservations to ensure that people had these things that they needed. I believe all in all, we ended up delivering over 8,000 masks up to Navajo and Hopi. We delivered cleaning supplies and masks once again up to San Carlos Apache and White Mountain. We also went to Manuelito's orphanage, a Navajo orphanage, and delivered toys and cleaning supplies and masks and snacks and good things like that for those kids out there in the orphanage that were isolated and couldn't go anywhere. So we became more of a community resource for doing good things as opposed to just educating folks. So that change, I think, was good as well. Today at the Museum of Indigenous People, Native people have a voice. As I said before, a majority of our board of trustees are Indigenous or Native people. I myself, being the executive director now, I would say I'm a mixed blood, but I have Indigenous roots. Our newest hire, who is our clerical assistant, is from Tohono O'odham. Her name is Melanie. She's a wonderful young lady. So I have bright plans for her future as well. Maybe when I'm done doing this, she will be the director. But most of our volunteers are made up of Native and non-Native folks. But all of our speakers, when we have our Indian education series, are all Native folks, as opposed to some professor that read a book and decided he was an expert on Indigenous people. We actually have Indigenous scholars and Indigenous leaders and artisans that will come and speak about their own culture. The Smoke Eyes thing was that they were preserving American Indian culture, but it's not anybody else's job to preserve someone else's culture. And that mindset needed to change. And when it did, we started doing the right thing here by letting the people tell their own story. And anytime we do an exhibit or anything else, we always involve that Native voice and make sure that what we're saying is the right thing to say. And we know when to shut our mouth too. And that mindset also needed to change, because as an institution of learning, a lot of times we get the whole know-it-all thing going on, and that's no good either. So our mindset needed to change in that way. We also changed the way we talked about things. We no longer referred to the objects in our possession or in our care as a collection. Collection speaks to, I own this. This is mine. It's a collection. I collected it. It's mine. And these cultural resource materials do not belong to us. They're in our care, but they don't belong to us. They belong to the people. So we had to change a lot of the ways we thought about this institution in academia, this institution culturally, this institution as individual human beings. We had to think differently. And that change took a long time. It wasn't something that just, switch flipped like when we all got locked down for COVID, where we were forced into it. This took a long time. And we did have some adversaries, particularly with the name change. You had some old folks here in Prescott and, older families. You're destroying history. You're destroying the history of Prescott. No, we're not. We're actually preserving it. And if the Smoke Eye truly believed that they wanted to preserve American Indian culture, well, this is how you do it. And you preserve it by letting those folks preserve it and giving them a venue to do so. So some of them really didn't want to hear that either. And what usually got them to clam up was when I would ask them individually, well, when was the last time you came to the museum to help us do anything? And they usually stopped there because they really didn't do anything. They just wanted to talk, mostly on social media. I hope I don't get on a rant and go for too long. So the MIP today has that slow change, and we're still working on that. We're still working on trying to do better and always do better and always include the voice of the people. I remember asking my grandfather when I was really young. I didn't understand politics. I saw something on TV and I didn't understand it. And I asked him, what's the difference between right wing and left wing? And he says, well, son, he said, the left wing wants everything to change. and the right wing wants everything to stay the same. He says, if you change too much, you'll lose who you are, which is understandable. But if you don't change at all, you get stagnant. And what happens to water when it's stagnant? It becomes poison. You can't drink it. It'll make you sick. So you got to change a little bit. He says right wing, left wing. He says it takes both wings for the eagle to fly. He goes, be the head, son. Be the head. Look where you're going. If you need to go left, go left. If you go right, go right. But don't pick one of them. It takes both wings for the eagle to fly. So change is good. Changing too fast, a lot of us don't like it sometimes, but sometimes it's inevitable. And how much more time do I have, Suki? Okay, she said I can go on and on. We have a lot of change too in the museum. We also took a lot of the old lighting and stuff that was in the museum, and I got to tell you, it was kind of like a tomb in there. It was pretty dark with all the old stone and everything in the over 30,000 latillas and vigas in the ceiling. Everything is dark colored. We went about changing our lighting situation by going a bit more green. We replaced all the lights with LED lights, which is taking our carbon footprint and making it a bit smaller. Now the museum is much brighter and much more welcoming. And we also took out that old smoke eye room, which I took great pleasure in, and dismantling. And we put up a new children's exhibit. And so in that children's exhibit, we talk about the medicine wheel. It's based on the medicine wheel. So in there, when you walk into it, to the east is represents springtime on the medicine wheel. All represents the time that you are born. We talk about color because in the springtime, Mother Earth's dress is beautiful with all the flowers and everything on it. And that's where we get a lot of our dyes, from the little insects and from the flowers and vegetation. So we talk about color and the importance of it. But it also, like I said, it represents infancy and childhood when you're coming from the spirit world here to Earth. And as you make your way around the medicine wheel to the south, that represents your teenage years. It's summertime, it's fun, it's love, it's warm. It's also when we get our monsoons. So we talk about water and the importance of that there. And then we go into autumn, where we are now. And that represents your adulthood. And that's a time of change. And that's when you change into the human being you're meant to become. Some of us take longer, but that's when it's supposed to happen. But it's also the time of hard work. When you're an adult, it's when you work the hardest. And we have our manos and matates there so the children can grind corn. We talk about the importance of corn at that time. And as we make our way again to the north, we talk about winter time, and it's the time of our elders, and that's the time we tell stories. You know, it's cold outside, it's icy, it's snowy, kind of nasty. You want to go inside and you listen to grandma and grandpa. Grandma and grandpa, tell me a story. And the reason, and so we have some 21st century technology in there, touchscreen, so kids can go in there and touch a screen and listen to auntie or uncle or grandma or grandpa tell a story. And it's pretty fun. And we have discovery drawers for hands-on stuff and plenty of other hands-on activities in there. Because let's face it, you bring a kid to a museum looking at dead stuff under a glass, it's pretty boring. They like to touch things. So we installed that room, and that was a great change for us. And if you have a chance to get out and come to the museum, we do require masks. They are mandatory. We have a lot of native visitors, and we don't want them to bring anything nasty home to the res. So we do require everyone to wear masks in the museum. So if you'd like to come by and check us out, we'd love to have you. So I would say, Wanto, thank you for inviting me. And Wanto, thank you for being who you are. And I very much enjoyed the second time I've been able to talk to you folks at the Unitarian Church. So Wanto, thank you.
get rid of all these little messages that were popping up on my screen. Thank you, Manuel, so much for that. I think a lot of our members are new to Prescott and didn't know all the history of the Smoke Eye people and the Smoke Eye Museum, and the changes that have come about because of you and Cindy and many other folks who fought for this change. So, as Ellen Watts said, the only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance. Let us now sing with joy our final hymn, Let It Be a Dance. Thank you to Kelly Wiseman, Asapruth Jackson for our closing words. I send you out now to share yourself with the world. May its promise and complexity set your mind ablaze. May you hold fast to what your life has taught you. May you question everything. And when you have changed the world and the world has changed you, may you return again to this place and share what you have learned with us. We will now be extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. So I just realized that I missed the walking with you part of our service, which I've always felt was very important. But I also, if Heather, if you could bring up the picture for that, if she's listening. So I now invite you to take as much time as you wish to visit with your friends and visitors in our chat room. And I wanted you to see this picture because Manuel has a wonderful story about this one and many other stories. And so I invite you also to be in the chat room or just stay in this room if you would like to hear more of those stories. Thank you so much, Manuel, today.
So thank you.